Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back. This is the BlackChannel.net radio, and I know I'm about 3 years late doing this video, but I finally got around to this, so I want to explain to you all how do you hook up your own mixer for being able to do an internet radio broadcast or podcast. Now, as you all know, I've been hosting my own internet radio broadcast now for half a decade, so I do know a thing or two about setting up a mixer for doing that. Before we get started, there are some basic things that you're going to need. First of all, you're going to need 2 computers. You're not really going to want to try to do this on one computer. The reason for that is because you need one computer with which to take calls on. Now, usually you're going to use a service like Blog Talk. If you have a hybrid box, that's okay too. You'll plug it up straight to the mixer, but just remember your hybrid box is only going to be able to take a limited number of calls. If you want to use a service like Blog Talk, though, which most people will use, you're going to need a separate computer that you'll be running Blog Talk and Skype on, since you need to Skype in with it. And Skype is also helpful if you have a co-host. You can just call them on Skype, and you got all of your incoming audio from your callers and your co-hosts and whatnot coming on one computer. So that's the computer that you will be taking calls and co-hosts on, that you'll be running Skype and Blog Talk on. The other computer is the system that you will be uploading over the internet to your video streaming service. So if you're using Ustream or Google Hangouts or whatever the case might be, your second computer will be the one that you upload to the internet all the combined audio from the mixer on, so that everybody can hear everything that's going on. Lastly, you'll have your mixer, and that is your console through which you will control what people are hearing. So you get to control all the audio input from there. The mixer model that I'm using for the purposes of this demonstration will be the Behringer 1204FX. So that's the Behringer Xenix 1204FX model. This is pretty much the cheapest mixer that you're going to be able to buy that will do everything that we need it to do. So I've looked everywhere, and this is pretty much going to be the cheapest model that you're going to find. It's going to set you back only $130, $150. So for less than the cost of a pair of Jordans, you can have a mixer that takes care of everything that you need. What's crucial about this mixer is that it has 2 aux-ins on it. One is the aux-in, the other one's called the FX. And you need 2 of these because if you're going to be sending, you're going to need more than one output for the audio is what you're going to need. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you have that. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I will be showing you a way that shows you a third way of getting the audio out of the mixer. But you want to have more than one aux-in because you definitely want to have the ability to hook up multiple devices if you need to. And you don't want to be limiting yourself from day one. You need to have this. There are other reasons also, but let's make this video short. First order of business is we're going to hook up to the headphones jack on the mixer because, of course, you can't tell if your inputs are right if you can't hear anything. Now, you should be aware on these mixers, they do not have the standard headphone jack sizes for plugging up on them. Everything on this mixer for headphone jacks will be 1/4 size, which is much bigger than your standard headphone jack size. So for your cell phones or for your iPods or whatnot, that jack size will be, that headphone jack size is 3.5. That'll be too small. It's standard, but it's too small. Mixers don't use that. Now, you can use those on a mixer, but you need to get a 1/4 adapter. So you can go to Radio Shack, Amazon, eBay, wherever, and purchase a 3.5 to 1.4 headphone jack adapter. So they're real cheap. They're like $1. So you can go there and go get one of those, and that'll work fine with the mixer. Just understand, you can't just plug up your standard headphone jack size and be going. Your mixer is not going to have a 3.5 input on it. As you can see here in this picture, I'm showing you that this is a standard headphone jack 3.5 that is plugged in to a 1/4 adapter there at the bottom of it. So I'm showing you here that it does work. Next order of business is getting the audio out of the mixer and into the 2 computers. We'll start by showing how to get the audio out of your mixer into the Skype/Blog Talk computer that you're going to be taking calls and talking to your co-hosts on. As you can see here in this example, you do not want to use the top jack. on that side where it says number 1 for the aux in. You do not want to use that one. The reason for that is because that one cannot be muted. Even if you press the mute buttons over your volume sliders, that one cannot be muted. People will still be able to hear you. So for the purposes of this example, we'll be using number 2 where it has FX send. You'll be plugging up on that one. You'll need a cable that has 1/4 headphone jack size on one end and 3.5 on the other. Once again, you can get these at Amazon, eBay, Radio Shack, wherever. But you want a cable that has a 1/4 jack input side on one end and a 3.5 standard headphone jack size on the other. So where it has the 1/4 size, that will go into your mixer. And on the 3.5 end, that will go into your computer. Now, if you have a desktop, you'll have the option usually of a line in or mic, and that's where you want to plug up the 3.5 in on your Skype computer, your Blog Talk computer, where it has line in or mic. Now, if you have a netbook or a laptop, you may not have, it may not specifically say line in. You can just plug it up where it says mic, because you're putting sound into the device. So as long as it plugs up in whether it says line in or mic, you'll be okay. If you have a desktop, though, you probably want to use line in instead of microphone, though, because the volume will be much higher. It's usually a lot lower if you're trying to plug it up to a mic on the desktop. Now, on more modern systems, they don't even have that anymore. It's just line in, and that takes care of, you know, microphone and line inputs. But just be aware, if you don't have that, I'm just giving this explanation so that for people who are just brand new to this and don't know anything at all, that's how the inputs will work, and you'll be fine if you do it the way I just explained. Now we need to get the audio out of the mixer and going to the Ustream computer. Now, as you can see here, once again, I'm not using the aux at the top. I'm using where it has the 2-track USB output. Now, this cable here, these are the RCA cables, so they're color-coded red and white. And that way it's color-coded to the inputs on your mixer. Now, what you'll need to do is you'll need to get an RCA to 3.5. So on one end, this cable has the RCA inputs, but on the other end that actually plugs up to the computer where the line in is, that's 3.5. Once again, you can get that at your electronics retailer where they sell these types of cables. So on one end, the red and white cables will plug up as I have shown here on this demonstration. And on the other end, you plug it up to the computer that you're uploading the video to Ustream on. This is where the audio will come from. And again, you just plug it up where it says line in or microphone, preferably line in if you have that option available. If not, just plug it up where it says mic. Next, we're going to deal with getting the audio from our two computers into the mixer. Now, the first thing we're going to show is how to get the audio out of your Ustream computer into the mixer. Now, this is not necessary, by the way. You do not have to do this step. I do it because I like to have the audio divided. Sometimes I'll play audio clips, and I actually play the audio clips on the same computer that I'm running Ustream on in certain occasions. I just prefer it as opposed to having everything just on the Skype Blog Talk computer. But you do not have to do that. It may be more convenient for you to just have everything, including your audio clips, on your Skype Blog Talk computer. You can do that. This is an extra step, but I'm just showing you that it does work. So you can disregard this particular step if you want to. But where we have the red and white RCA cables going in on column 6 there, where it says line in /78, that's column 6. And if you want to, like I say, you can use that one for sound input as well. It's not necessary, but you do have the option. Now, just a brief aside here, as you can see, those are RCA cables also. They're color-coded red and white. And as I said before, the mixer does not accept anything other than 1/4 inputs in those particular slots. So I had to get RCA to 1/4 adapters to get it to work there. But this is just showing you, you can mix and match just so long as you have the inputs correct. Now, moving right over here to the, now before I go on, that is for where sound will come out of the Ustream computer or another device. It doesn't matter. You can just use it like that, but I'm just showing you my setup here on this particular mixer. Moving over to the left, this is where audio from your Skype/Blog Talk computer will be coming in. Now, as you can see here, these are the dual inputs for the left and right channels, and they are 1/4 in size and where it plugs into the mixer. Once again, you can buy these cables like that. On one end, it's got left and right 1/4 inputs. On the other end, it has a single 3.5 jack on the other end. Now that 3.5 jack on your Blog Talk Skype computer will plug in where you've got either your line out or speaker, whichever it is. That is where you'll have that plugged up on your Skype/Blog Talk computer, so the sound can come out of that computer. And here is where you will plug up the 1/4 cables. So now we've got the sound from our Skype Blog Talk computer into the mixer. So all of our sound is in the mixer now, except one, the microphone itself. And that's when we have our picture here showing you plugged up on the actual mixer itself. So your XLR cable will plug up here on one end, and the other end, of course, goes into your microphone. Now, the great thing about this mixer is that it has regular electrical power and phantom power as well. Now, for those of you who don't know about microphones, there are basically two types of microphones. One is called dynamic, and another one is called studio condenser. The cheaper microphones that they sell at Radio Shack have to run off of a bit of electrical current, and those are called dynamic. Your more expensive studio microphones do not run off a current like that. They're condenser microphones. It still uses a smaller bit of current, but it's called phantom power. But understand, if your mixer is not set up that it provides phantom power, then your condenser microphone will not work with that mixer. So in addition to everything else, you need a mixer that also provides phantom power. And this mixer does that. So it doesn't matter what kind of microphone you get, this mixer will be able to handle it. So that's why I'm recommending this type of mixer to you, this model of mixer, because it'll be able to handle what you're going to be doing with it. And the equipment that you do get with it, without sending you through a whole bunch of gymnastics or leaving you having to go back and go buy another microphone because your mixer does not support it. Next order of business. Let's take a look at the actual volume sliders down here. Now, the volume sliders are, of course, they're pretty self-explanatory. They'll control the volume at which things are being heard coming out from the mixer. It won't affect how you're hearing it in your headphones, but it will affect how other people are hearing, how the final output of the audio is. And that's what you got a mixer for, so you can control what devices are heard at what volumes, as opposed to everything just coming at people in the old kind of way. So, as you can see, the yellow mute lights are on, but if you press the black buttons right above them, that will unmute whatever it is you have going, and you can control the audio for it. Now, over to the right is the final mix, where it says main mix, and that will control the final volume that everything is coming out of the mixer at, where other people are hearing it. Now, you'll also see on the mixer where it's got those squares where it says 0 at. And if you go beyond that point, just understand that's pretty much the clipping point on mixers. If you're just listening to something, it won't bother you that much. But when you've got all this equipment hooked up, if you exceed going past the 0 point, just understand that even though you can go past it, it'll produce a squelch or a squeal that you may not be able to hear it. Sometimes you can hear it, but you may not be able to hear it. But your audience and your people on Skype and Blog Talk and your co-hosts, they will be able to hear it because they're on the other side of the output. So in most cases, I can hear it if it does that, but just be aware, not in every case. You may not be able to hear that you're squelching and squealing on people. So just be aware You want to try to stay below that 0, get as close to it as you can, and you're going to want to do some sound tests with people so that they can tell you how far up you can go before it starts doing that. But understand, that's the danger of going past that 0 point, is that now you're entering the territory of squealing in people's ears, producing that high squeal to it. So you want to avoid that as well, and that's on all these channels. Once you're getting to broadcasting on every volume slider, including main mix, you go beyond that 0 and you can produce a squeal. Next order of business here is understanding your knobs, and I saved that for last because this is where most people get tripped up and what prevents them from being able to use a mixer, because they don't know how to do the knobs on it. Now, the knobs on your mixer are pretty straightforward. On this particular model here, you can take a look at the column for the microphone, for example. As you can see, I've got the two that we're looking at are where it has the color-coded ones for the orange and the red, because those are your sends. The ones above that are for the audio tone qualities, bass, mid-tone, and treble. Doesn't matter how you have those. You can adjust that to your own personal tastes. Those are not essential. You can just leave those however you want to, except I wouldn't turn them all the way up, because of course that's the way people are going to hear it, unless you want to emphasize more of adjust the sound quality for people. But the two that you're concerned about are the orange and red, because those control the volume for the aux and the FX sends. Now, as you can see, each individual input channel for each of your individual devices has their own individual controls for the aux send or the FX send. So you can get to choose on each individual device just how much volume that you want to push out through either the aux send or the FX send for that individual device. You might want more for one device or less for another. Now, we're going to start with the microphone column, which is number 3 on here for this example, since that's the device that people will be hearing you on. Now remember, before, we're using the FX send to go from our mixer over to the Skype Blog Talk computer, where our co-hosts and callers will be hearing us. So on that number 3 column, if you take a look at the orange knob, that's your FX send. You see I've got that one positioned slightly right of center. And that's because the more devices you have plugged up to your mixer, that's going to impact the volume. You'll find that out when you get your mixer. You'll see that the more devices you plug up, the more it slightly takes the volume down, because each device is drawing more power. The other thing is that if you've got Blog Talk is naturally going to impact your volume. For the people on Blog Talk and Skype, it'll naturally impact your volume that they can hear you at. So I tweak it just a little bit so that I make sure everybody can hear me. But if I've got a caller on the line who has decided that they're just so weak at making their points that they're just going to try to talk over me, I actually have the ability with the mixer to turn that FX volume for my microphone up to such an uncomfortable rate that is hurting people's ears. So if I turn that thing all the way over to the right, I can turn it up so loud that it becomes uncomfortable for people. Now, if you've got somebody who is on your line who is still trying to talk over you, even though you know you've turned it up to an uncomfortable volume to get control of the caller, at that point, I just drop their call, because you've just decided at that point that you're just going to hijack my program, and I do not negotiate with terrorists. Now, moving over to column number 5, that's where the audio from the Skype Blog Talk computer is coming back into the mixer. Now, technically speaking, the FX knob is supposed to be turned all the way over to the left so that you don't have feedback issues. Because remember, we already have the FX send talking over to the Skype computer. You don't really want the audio for that channel for the FX, of course, being open on the same channel that you've got your volume from your Skype computer coming back into the mixer. So technically you're supposed to turn that all the way to the left to turn that volume all the way off. But on mine, I actually have it straight up halfway there, because sometimes that may impact what people are hearing. If it's not causing the people on your computer, on your Skype Blog Talk computer, any problem hearing you, like I say, you can just either leave it up. If it is causing problems, if it's impacting their volume or whatever, then you can just turn it down all the way so that you don't have to worry about any feedback or loopback issues. But just be aware that you do have the option on that one. It's supposed to be all the way down, and I used to have it like that, but some people were reporting problems with that, so I've been able to turn it up halfway with no difficulties. But if it causes you problems, you can just go ahead and turn that all the way down and check to see what that does. All the other slots in this picture here, since they're unoccupied, it doesn't matter about the aux and FX on those because they're unoccupied. There's nothing plugged up to the other lines. Columns 3, 5, and 6 are the only ones we're concerned about here because those are the only ones that are actually in use. But this gives you a picture of how the knobs are configured on here. And you can adjust for your mic out, but for the audio coming in, you don't really want to do anything to those, to be totally honest. Now, this other part over here is the essential part, the next essential step. Here's where you have the inputs for the aux sends and the stereo aux returns. This is showing you a picture of how I have them set up. For the aux sends, they are likewise pointed straight up in the noon position. Now, over where it says stereo aux returns, however, I do have the aux channels, which are in red. Those are both pointed up straight to 12 noon. But if you'll notice, right below, on the number 2 slot, the FX is pointed left of center. And the reason for that is because that will also control the volume at which people hear things. It becomes, if I turn it up halfway, it usually becomes distorted or starts blowing people's ears out or starts making distortion to it. So for that reason, that's about as high as it's going to be able to get. People still hear you just fine, but without causing any type of distortion. Some of you may have different results, however, but with the configuration that I'm using here, and the 2-track may have something to do with that, but with the configuration that I'm using here, going anything beyond this has the possibility of presenting interference, distortion, noise on the line and whatnot. So I try to stay away from that. So just taking a look at this here, you can see how it looks. Now, lastly, let's deal with the buttons on here. Now, all of these buttons, the red ones and the black ones and the gray ones, all of them are up. I don't have any of them pressed down. They are all in the up position except where it says main mix under source. So just to the left of the white headphones control room knob, where it says main mix in source, that is the only one that I actually have the button pressed down for. The gray main mix button where it says main mix alt 3-4 under the stereo aux returns, that one is up. The only button that I have pressed down in that area of the mixer is where it has main mix under source. Everything else is up on the mixer itself. So, as long as you follow the instructions that I've given you here, this is the way that I have it set up on my mixer. This is the way I've been doing it now for half a decade. The instructions that I've given you here will generally correlate to any other type of mixer that you buy. So you now have the information that you need for hooking up your own mixer to do your own internet radio broadcast, podcast, whatever you want to do with it there. Now, if this configuration does not work for you, or if you have any other issues, please do not contact me. I do not provide technical support. All I can show you is that this one is the one that works for me. You have that option available to you. Now get on out there and go cause some chaos. This has been the BlackChannel.net Radio. I am Jason Black, and as always, remember that black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.